The two games that factor, of course, into the division race, and I'll bypass North Carolina and Georgia Tech, considering that the Heels have only lost, I believe. But let's see, now we're down to 2 games in the ACC, so they're still in the running in the Coastal, but they should win at Georgia Tech. But we'll focus on Pitt and Duke. Of course, the Blue Devils ran roughshod over the Hokies last week at 45-10. Pitt looked really good a couple weeks ago and pulling off the big upset against UCF. Of course, that doesn't count into the conference standings. They lost their most important game to date to Virginia in a close one at halftime, in which they got manhandled in the second half. So your thoughts about Pitt and Duke?
Yeah, this is one of those games that's a total toss-up. I've been actually pretty impressed overall with both of these teams. You look at Duke and what happened in the opener against Alabama. We knew pretty quickly that we didn't know a whole lot about Duke, because they're just a different program at a different stage than Alabama is. But you see what Duke has done since then. They blew out a North Carolina A&T team, that's one of the better teams in the FCS. They blow out Middle Tennessee State. They go into Blacksburg on a Friday night on national TV and embarrass the Hokies. Duke has looked quite good behind Quentin Harris, a guy who, obviously was a veteran on that roster, a guy who sat behind a very good quarterback in Daniel Jones. And, he's emerged as a guy who's been able to hit short passes in the 5 to 10 yard range in that intermediate passing game, and he's made his impact there. And he's also been able to make a lot of plays on the ground, as we saw last Friday night against Virginia Tech. So Quentin Harris overall has been taking care of the football. He's taken the offense to a different level there at Duke than most expected. A lot of people expected a rebuild there for Duke, but they're kind of, taking a step forward and picking up right where they left off a year ago. On the other side with Pittsburgh, you look at Pittsburgh's, obviously their victory over UCF. They had that loss in the opener against UVA that didn't look quite that good, but since then they've looked pretty solid. Kenny Pickett's thrown the ball really well. He didn't play last weekend. It was Nick Patty, the backup, leading them past Delaware in a pretty tight affair that, I thought Delaware could keep that game close in a letdown spot for Pittsburgh after that huge victory over UCF at home. But, when you have a backup quarterback, getting the job done and still looking pretty decent in the process, I think is a really solid step forward for Pittsburgh. They've run the ball okay. Todd Sibley Jr. had a really nice game last weekend, over 100 yards rushing. He was able to get in the end zone on the ground. That helped a lot. If they're able to get Kenny Pickett back healthy and fully healthy, I do expect Pittsburgh to be able to score enough points in this game to beat Duke. I've been very impressed by the Pittsburgh defense. This is the best defense I've seen under Pat Narduzzi. Mark, we've talked about this time and time again on this show, how Pittsburgh's defense has not really looked as good as we expected it to under Pat Narduzzi, given what he accomplished at Michigan State as a defensive coordinator under Mark D'Antonio. He comes back to Pittsburgh, and he's a guy as a head coach who hasn't really authored a defense that's been all that good. And now all of a sudden you're seeing a defense this year that looks pretty damn competent. And, they're playing with some confidence right now. They have, playmakers at all 3 levels of that defense. And, Kenny Pickett keeps getting better at quarterback, and he's the X factor because he's a guy who's been more of a game manager throughout his time at Pittsburgh so far. But he's now emerging as a guy who's going to throw between 250 and 300 yards a game. And if you complement that with a running game that's always been good at Pittsburgh, I think the Panthers have a chance to really make some noise in the Coastal, more noise than I thought anyway.
Yeah, to your point, UCF scoring 34 is like most teams scoring 21, and a Penn State offense that's been racking up points and yardage against everybody, including Maryland last week at 59, only 17 points against a Pitt team as the game went down to the final drive, and Pitt had it down to about the 25-yard line to try to tie up that game before they fell at 17-10. Mike McDaniel breaking down the ACC for us. You can join us at a number of locations there, but just lock in on Twitter, Mike McDaniel CFB, and you can follow Mike wherever he goes. Mike, we appreciate you stopping by.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it, man.